Welcome, one and all, to another edition of the Hammer Territory podcast. Shawn, Coleman, and Stephen Tolbert with you. Of course, Hammertory, you can find all over all forms of social media. Myself at StatsSAC, Stephen at B_outliers on X as well, all on X, Twitter, whatever you call it nowadays. Hammer Territory, again, across all forms of social media, part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. Stephen, we recently talked about some of the comments that were made by Alex Anthopoulos. We've talked all off season about the moves that the Braves should be making, that they're not making, and things like that. But we can get back to talking baseball because spring training is here, and we're going to talk about probably one of the most pivotal parts of this 2025 season because he'll be back on the field, Ronald Acuña Jr. Before we get started, Stephen, how are you, sir? Hope all is well to you.
Shawn, what's up, buddy? Yeah, it's good to talk actual baseball on the field. We've obviously on the off season, we talk a lot about the roster and payroll and the GM and free agents and contracts. And, that stuff is fun and interesting, but at some point it's all about what happens on the field. It's so much more fun to talk about stuff that's on the field. And obviously with Acuña, we talk about an MVP level player. He was the MVP in 2023 unanimously. Obviously tore his ACL last year. He's coming back. And this is one of the biggest storylines for the Braves in 2025 is when does Acuña come back? What does he look like when he comes back? Are we going to get 2022 Ronald? Are we going to get 2023 Ronald? Are we going to get some, in between? Can he stay healthy is a massive question. He's now lost a year and a half to an ACL, or really like two, or, he's lost the half of the 21 season. He lost, the basically half of the 22 season. If you think about when he came back, he was good in 23 and then he lost half of the 24 season. So he's lost a lot of time to injury. Can he stay healthy? What is he going to look like when he's healthy or when he's back? These are all massive questions for the Braves as we start 2025.
And that, I think, is the biggest thing to discuss about, kind of is going to be the theme of this show. When it comes to Ronald Acuña Jr., as much as we know when it comes to the type of player he has been and he can be again, I think also in the near term, the best way to describe it is it's not only the fact that what version of Ronald Acuña Jr. we're going to get is an unknown. It's the fact that it could be a wide range of possibilities. And we'll get a bit into that as we kind of look at his season coming up. But of course, Ronald Acuña Jr. did give us some things to know. He did add a bit of certainty when it came to where he is in his progress. And overall, it wasn't just, a player speaking as you naturally would expect to be all positive and to have, just a rosy outlook and all this different stuff. It definitely seems as if Ronald is in a better place, not just physically, but mentally. Now, when I say that, what I'm meaning is that we've seen this before. Coming off the 2021 season, going into the 2022 season, Ronald was dealing with his first ACL tear. He came back in 2022, did not perform up to the expectations many had hoped. But one of the big reasons why was because he was coming back from that major injury, but also mentally, just trying to trust his body again in the outfield, at the plate, on the base paths. That is something that definitely was clear when he was playing in 2022. This time around, physically, Ronald says that things are much more stable going into spring training than they were that year. And I think it's also just trusting himself. Now, what that means, what's going to be the end result of that will remain to be seen. But a big question that I think was answered with his comments earlier this week was that mentally he seems to be in a much better place going into this year than when he previously tore his ACL 3 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, he's been through it. Like he knew what to expect in terms of the rehab. He knew what to expect in terms of the sensation. Once he got started, it's probably a little less scary this time around just because it's not all so brand new. He did tear the ACL a month earlier in the season this time than he did last time, which helps a lot. He had a full extra 6 weeks to recover, versus what he did in 2022. He's already running. He gave that interview, which by the way, he gave in 90% English, which is unbelievable. I have such respect for people who can speak two languages, but especially when the second language they have to learn is English, which is a crazy language to learn. We take it for granted because it's the language we grew up with, but it's like, if you look at the rules of English, they don't make any sense.
And it gets personality. Like, I think that that's something also that
Yeah.
shows when as he continues to give more and more of these interviews in English, he has a great personality, just an awesome personality, and you see more of that come out. So I think that that also adds to the point that you're making. Yeah, it was awesome to see that, but also his personality coming out more.
Yeah. And he said Franco lost his job because Ronald learned how to speak English, which was funny. So that was cool to see. But yeah, he just talked, he was just so much more confident. He's already running. He said he's running at like 90, 95%. I don't know how you measure that or quantify that, but he said, the big thing for now is cutting. He's not cutting yet. And obviously that's a big part of base running and playing in the outfield is being able to stop and start. That's going to be the big thing in terms of being able to play baseball. So that's what they're waiting to do is to allow him to get to the point where he's cutting. But he's already hitting. If you listen to his interview, like that sounded like a dude that could play tomorrow. He's not going to play tomorrow, but it's very good that physically him and Strider both seem like they're ahead of schedule. And now it's just about getting them cleared for baseball, because if they were behind schedule physically, this would be a different conversation. But both of those guys seem like, and obviously this is going to be an Acuña episode, but to be where they both are physically is a big deal. And this kid deserves like 10 years of health. Like if anyone deserves some health, it's this kid, because he's dealt with more injuries. I mean, he's been hurt so much. I need to see like 10 years of Ronald Acuña Jr. healthy to see what the numbers he could put up, the awards he could win. Could he get to the Hall of Fame? Like that's the level of talent we're talking about. Baseball is an unfair, can be a cruel sport sometimes. So you're not guaranteed anything. Michael Soroka, everybody remembers all that happened with him. So we'll see, but it was really good to see him. It was really good to hear from him. He seems very positive. He seems very encouraged, which makes me feel very positive and very encouraged. So yeah, I know it's going to be May, but I'm already getting very excited for Ronald Acuña Jr. returning.
How's that New Year's resolution going for you? The fad diets or the BS resolutions are so out. How about just spending less on your wireless bill, Kratz?
Mint Mobile to the rescue. Scotty, they've got half off their 3-month unlimited plan. That's 3-month plan for only $15 a month, baby.
All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network.
Switching is easy. They'll convert your current phone and phone number for you too.
Switch to Mint and new customers can get half off an unlimited plan until February 2nd. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/territory. That's mintmobile.com/territory.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on their first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
And that's the thing, right? We all want to see Ronald Acuña Jr. back on the field. And nobody wants to see that more than number one Ronald Acuña Jr. himself, but also Alex Anthopoulos and the team. But something that I'll say to that is this. We talked about, how Alex Anthopoulos' comments on Acuña, in the show that we did about Alex Anthopoulos' start of the spring training media gathering. And he alluded to the fact that Ronald's not going to play in any spring training games. He's going to do a lot of work on the backfields. We'll have a better idea of when he may come back towards the end of spring training, start of the season. I, for one, will go on record saying this. I am fine if Ronald Acuña Jr. doesn't come back even till mid or late May. And here's the reason that I say that. The reason why I say that is because I don't feel that they rushed him back the last time that he had the ACL tear. I just feel like that Ronald and the team are putting value on where is Ronald going to be trusting himself once again. I don't think it's going to take as long for him to do that. I'm not questioning that he will be able to do that. I think that he's going to be able to do that and do that with confidence. But I feel like that this team is going to put value on Ronald not just being out on the field, but him being as close to 100% as possible once he does return. I know he's naturally going to have a buffering period where he's got to get reacclimated when he's out there. But my point that I'm getting at is that if it takes an extra 2 weeks to a month for Ronald to get to that point, I am fine with him waiting to do that because I feel that that's going to be best for Ronald. Him having the most trust that he can once he starts playing versus building up that trust through playing, I feel that that's going to put him in a better position to succeed. So if he's not going to be back until mid-May or late May, but we do feel much more confident he's going to be back to being the Ronald Acuña Jr. we all know and love, I am perfectly fine with that, and I hope that's the route they go.
Yeah, I don't know how much, having him come back and then asking him to play at like 85% is going to work. And I think that's kind of what they did last time is they brought him back pretty early and then they said, let's just take it easy. And Ronald just doesn't play like that. And he's never played like that. And that's what Alex said. Somebody asked Alex the other day about, Ronald said he's not going to run as much. And Alex is like, well, once those competitive juices start flowing, I have a hard time believing that. And I agree with that. You're much better off waiting a little extra time so that he's playing at 100% than you are having him come back early and telling him to play at 85%. And so I agree with you. I would much rather see him, if it's not the beginning of May, middle of May, late May, and be 100% and be able to just be Ronald Acuña Jr., then try to bring him back early and tell him to throttle it back half the time he's on the field, because that's not going to work. So he's just too damn important, and not just for 2025, but 2026, 2027. Like, I think they got a little aggressive last time. Remember last time he was going to play in Gwinnett for like a month, and he wasn't going to play the outfield. He was going to DH, and they had all these like little rules that they were going to do. And then like the second game back in Gwinnett, he was in right field. And then like 2 weeks later, he was in Atlanta. And so I think they got over aggressive with it last time. And I think that's one of the reasons Alex said just off jump, he's not playing in any spring training games. Now I need them to actually do that. I think they're going to be tempted by watching him work out to play him, but let's just take it slow. There's no reason to rush this thing. The offense should be plenty good to at least hold down the fort while he's gone. Profar, being able to hit Profar at the top of the lineup helps a ton. There's no reason to rush this. And I think they rushed it a little bit last time. If it's May, that's fine. If it's late May, if it's, even if it's like early June, it's not, how he comes back is more important than when he comes back, in my opinion. And I would much rather see 100% Ronald Acuña Jr. in June than 70% Ronald Acuña Jr. in May. So I think that's what they're going to do. I think that's why they've kind of taken the steps. They announced very early that he was not going to be ready for opening day. They announced very early that he's not going to play in any spring training games. So I think they're taking a more cautious approach, and I 100% approve that approach.
So then let's get into when he comes back, what's kind of to be expected, because, we talk about, 2022, and we talk about when he got hurt last year, talking about the approaches that happened in those when those were 2 years apart. But what about the time in between? And the range of outcomes that we've seen have been absolutely spectacular and also a bit head scratching. Absolutely spectacular was 2020, or it was 2023, right? That's when he had his MVP season, his 40-70 year, a year we literally had not seen from anybody else in baseball history. But 2022, when he did come back, obviously, as we discussed, he struggled a bit. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that he was just trying to trust his body, get into the right spot mentally. That's understood. But I don't want to ignore the 50-game sample that we got last year, which in terms of a season was actually statistically Ronald Acuña Jr.'s worst output. Now, Steven, I'm going to let you allude to a very good point that you mentioned before the podcast. But last year, Ronald Acuña Jr., a 322 WOBA. His expected WOBA was 350, so he did have a little bit of underperformance, or a better expected performance than he actually produced. But overall, a 105 WRC plus. For reference, in 2022, he had a 115. He struggled last year. in many of the same ways that many players in our lineup struggled. She was striking out at a much higher rate, was not performing well with runners in scoring position. He did not get off to a good start to start last season, but I think that there was a reason why, and it goes back to once he comes back, if he can put his injury concerns behind him, when Ronald Acuña Jr. can just focus on playing baseball, I think that's when he's at his best, which is among the best in the game.
Yeah, so I had Mark Bowman on the show last year around this time. It might have been in April last year, but and Bowman and I were just talking, and he said when Ronald Acuña Jr. came to camp last year and he was doing live BPs, that he didn't miss a single pitch, that he looked like 2023 Ronald Acuña Jr. all over again, that he was hitting missiles. And when I'm not talking about BP, I'm talking about live BP against live pitching. And he looked incredible. And then if people remember, about 2 weeks into spring training last year, he had a knee scare, and he hurt his knee running, and they sat him down for like 3 weeks. And what Bowman said was when he came back, he just wasn't the same. And that's what we saw last year for the 6 weeks that he played last year before he tore his ACL. Was it wasn't the same guy as it was in 23. And I think Ronald is such a lower half hitter. You know, he's not a big guy. He's like 200 bucks soaking wet, or 200 pounds soaking wet, but he hits the ball 480 feet. And the way he does that is he is an incredible bottom half hitter. He uses his legs, he uses his knees to hit. And anytime he's not had full confidence in those knees is when you've seen him struggle. And he gets very upper body with his swing. He gets very handsy with his swing. He changes his mechanics. And I think we've seen him. I think that's why we see such variance in his play relative to how he feels about his knees. And so I think that contributed to last year after he had the knee scare in spring training. I think it's definitely part of what happened in 2022 after he came back from the first ACL. And again, it's why I would much rather just take it slow with him this time. Let him get fully 100% comfortable being able to bend that back knee when he's hitting. You know, he gets so much torque off his bottom half when he's hitting. That's where his power comes from. You know, I think that's why we see the variance in his game the way we see. And I for one would much rather, I want him to be confident. I want him to be confident in the knee. I think he will be more confident this time because he's already done it once. You know, there's a difference between the back knee and the front knee in terms of hitting. So that, you know, that's going to make a difference as well. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I think they'll be very conservative. And I think he will have a much easier time coming back this time around than he did last time. And here's to it. I mean, God, I hope so, because when that kid is healthy and producing, he's maybe the best player on the planet. You know, I know there's other guys that you can talk about, but when he's healthy and right, there's not a better baseball player on the planet. So that's what I want. You know, like you said, take all the time you need. Let's be conservative about it this time around. And let's hopefully, when we get to the point where he's playing, he looks more like the best player on the planet.
Absolutely. And it shines a spotlight on why players at his level of production, when we talk about level of production, we're talking about a guy who annually is a 40-plus stolen base threat. He's gotten up to 70, as we mentioned. But also, you take the 2020, 2021 season before his injury and 2023 season, Stephen, in those 3 years, he averaged a 165 WRC plus. That is top 0.5 percentile in the game in terms of his production at the plate. So I've asked the question all off season, and I know that you have as well. I think many have. What version of Ronald are we going to get? It's not just having him back. The Braves need for Ronald to be back at the difference maker that he's been. I'm going to go ahead and say I don't think that we're going to get the 2023 level of Ronald Acuña this year, especially on the base pass. I just think that they're going to kind of, you know, they're going to hold him back a bit. And I think that they should. I definitely think that they should. In other words, if I were to put it into a numerical expectation, 15 to 20 steals is what I would predict for this season. And I don't feel that that is in any way, shape, or form outlandish. I also feel, though, that when he comes back, we're going to see his production be at a good level. It's going to kind of raise eyebrows, I feel, that when he comes back, he's going to get back to being the offensive force that he has been. I don't think that's a 160 or higher WRC plus. I feel that you're probably going to see him kind of land in that 125 to 135 range. But if he can be going good, if he can continue to get better as we get to the end of the season in the playoffs, that to me is what's going to make this the most successful season for Ronald Acuña Jr. we can see. Can he be as close to the old version of himself once the end of the season, the stretch run for the season, the playoffs come around? If that's the case, and I think there's a good chance we could see that, that is what I think will be one of the best overall outcomes for this season for the Braves. And again, I think if they give him the time to have his confidence in the right place when he comes back, there's a good chance we see that version of Ronald.
I want to see how big the bat is versus 2022. That's the big question, because if he's running like a 140 WRC plus, which is kind of his career average, then you don't care. I don't care how much he steals. If he's that level of hitter, I don't care how. I like stolen bases are a little overrated in my opinion anyways, and especially when you factor in caught stealings. His bat is way more important than his stolen bases. So let's say that. His bat is way more important than stolen bases are. So if they have to say, listen, Ronald, you get 20 steals a year and that's all you get, fine. That's fine with me. The bat is way more important. The interesting thing to me is going to be defense, because Ronald's never been a great, I mean, Ronald, even in 23, when he won the MVP, Ronald, it's not like Ronald was like a Gold Glove caliber right fielder. He's not a natural. I actually think Ronald's actually more natural in center field than he is in right field. Ever since he's moved to right field, he's always been a little awkward. He doesn't get the best jumps on balls. He's obviously a freak athlete and he runs very fast, but he doesn't get the best reads. He doesn't get the best jumps. So I'm curious to see what the defense looks like, because if it already wasn't good when he had one ACL surgery, then how's it going to look after two ACL surgeries? We know that Profar in left is not a Gold Glove caliber outfielder either. You know, Michael Harris, of course, is an elite center fielder, so that helps. But yeah, the defense is going to be interesting. I would guess that he's probably going to be pretty bad out there if we're just being honest, but we'll see. The bat is more important than defense, though. And that, again, it's more important than stolen bases. It's more important than defense. What that bat looks like is, it's not everything, but it's almost everything. And if he's back up to a 140 guy, 140, 150 guy, I don't care. I don't care about the defense. I don't care about the stolen bases. Give me that offensive Ronald again, where he's cracking 40 homers and 20 doubles and, you know, just a monster of 15% walk rate. That's another thing that they missed desperately last year was his on-base percentage. He's an on-base monster, even when he's not going good. Like, you know, 2024, before he hurt the knee, he wasn't hitting great, but he was still taking a lot of walks. He was on base a ton, and that helps. And so getting that on-base percentage back in the lineup, getting that power back in the lineup, that's mainly what I care about. The defense and the stolen bases are probably going to not be great. We're probably just going to have to accept that. But if he's hitting the way he can hit, it's not going to matter. So that bat, how big is that bat in 2025 is a massive, the biggest part of this story by far.
Yeah, and I also think another factor that plays into that is that, you know, I know the defense is a big question, and I know that more than likely in terms of it being an outcome, it may be negative. I agree with that. But to your point about it all coming down to the bat, I think for Ronald, the other thing is him being in as normal of a routine as an everyday player as he can be once he does come back. You know, not having him, you know, take off, you know, 5 off days in the first month, or take off an off day every week, or, you know, DH in every third game. I think if the Braves do that type of juggling, it probably increases the chances that, you know, Ronald, you know, his mentality may not be as strong as we want for it to be. When he comes back, let him be like he normally has been, your starting fielder, your leadoff hitter, and have him know that you're going to that spot every day. And I think that, kind of like we discussed with Sean Murphy, that knowledge that he has that he's going to be in the same spot where he has produced so well throughout his career, I think that's going to be a big contributing factor as well, making sure that he's in the same routine that he's always been and always thrived in.
Yeah, let's be honest. The Braves have a dedicated DH anyways. Like, Marcell Azuna's not coming out of the lineup. So
Yeah, you can't replace your best hitter over the past year and a half. You can't.
yeah,
You can't.
so
So
he's not. They're not even going to have that option, and I think that's another reason why they're going to take it slow with him is because they know when they put him back, he's got to be in right field because they're not taking Marcell out of the lineup, nor should they. So that will actually help Ronald, I think, in some regards. The fact that he's going to have to play in right field, that he's going to be in there pretty much every day. I agree with you. I think sometimes taking days off can be a detriment, especially when you're trying to get timing back. This was the argument about Shawn Murphy last year. We kept saying over and over again, Murphy missed 2 months, and then every time he came, he would play a game and then sit a game and then play a game and then sit a game and then play, trying to get your timing back like that is brutal. So yeah, I think he'll be out there whenever he does come back. I think he'll be out there every day. And that will help him, but it's all about the bat, in my opinion. I mean, if he does steal a little bit, I think anything you get out of that department is gravy. If he doesn't look like terrible in the outfield, then you take it. That's a little bit of gravy as well. But how he hits, how he looks at the plate, that bat, that's everything. And that's going to be a big part of the second half of his career, especially post 2 ACLs, is the bat, how it looks, is he back to the 140, 150 guy? And that's what we'll learn together.
And the other thing to me that stands out about it is that as high octane as Ronald Acuna is, just in terms of how he plays, just at such a high energy, high output, high level all the time, injuries are going to consistently be a scare. That's been the case throughout his whole season, not only in terms of the fact that he's had 2 ACL surgeries, but it always seems 5 to 7 times a year he's out for the next game or so because of an injury scare. That's just a natural product of just how active he is. While you want to be cautious with that, you don't want to change his approach. I've talked mentally, I've talked physically. You still want to make sure that he's being smart with how he approaches the game, but you don't want to change who he is. And I feel like the Braves have that in mind above all else. And I feel like that we're going to get that version of Ronald when he comes back. So Stephen Tolbert, let's put you on the spot for as close to a minute as possible. Here are 5 questions to quantify what a successful season from Ronald Acuña Jr. looks like. First question, Stephen. Will Ronald Acuña Jr. have more home runs or steals in 2025?
That's a good question because I could definitely see like a 20 year. I'm going to go with homers. I think the fact that he's done this before, I think his power will come back. And I do think they might limit his stolen base opportunities. So I'm going to say he's more likely to have like a 25, 15 year. So I'll say homers, but I think it will be close.
In 2022, when he came back from injury, he had a 115 WRC plus and a 2.4 FWAR. Does he eclipse both of those numbers this year?
How many games was it? 115?
119.
119. It will be close because he's going to come back later than he did the last time. I'm going to say he's under 119 games, but I'm going to say he's over 2.2 WAR. I think he will play better, but play in less games because I think there's a chance he might not come back till middle of May or even late May. So I'll say he plays less, but he plays better.
That's a very good way of putting it. Another quick question for you: a career strikeout rate of 22. He's been at 23. 2022 is at 23%. 2024 he was at 23%. 2021 he was at 23%. His MVP season he was at 11%. When he comes back, Stephen, that strikeout percentage below or above 20%.
I think it'll be above. What he did in 23 doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense to hit for much power as he did with an 11% strikeout rate. It's like Barry Bonds stuff. That doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to say he's above. I'll say he's at career average 21, 22. That's the other thing is that the strikeouts jumped up last year, in part because I don't think he was trusting the knee enough. I think he was trying to get started early, swung at some bad pitches. I do think the strikeout rate will come down from where it was last year, but I think 11% is not something you can ever predict again. So I'm going to say it's going to be 21, 22%.
Stephen Tolbert, on a scale, we'll go with 4 questions. On a scale of 0 to 100 in terms of percent, how confident are you Ronald Acuña Jr. will be as close to the normal Ronald Acuña Jr. we're used to seeing once the playoffs come around this year? And will he be a big contributing factor to the Braves winning a playoff series this year?
Well, I think Ronald will be back to Ronald. He won't be 2023 Ronald. I don't know if we'll ever see that again, but I think he'll be in the 140, 145 WRC plus range, which is his career number. That's kind of where he lives. That's where I expect him in 2025. As far as will he help the Braves win a playoff series, a lot of that's going to come down to the pitching and how healthy their pitching is. I don't remember the last time they made it to the playoffs with their pitching intact. So, but if he's Ronald Acuña Jr., if he's 140, 145 Ronald Acuña Jr., then that's obviously going to help. But yeah, the pitching is going to determine just as much of that as Ronald will.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ronald is going to be as close to being the old version of Ronald as we've seen once the playoffs come around. And I'll go on record to say as well, Ronald Acuña Jr. will be the best offensive force in either the wild card or divisional series as the Braves continue to progress, hopefully towards a National League Championship Series on their way to a World Series. I'm going to stop saying the World Series, and we are going to end this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast. Been a lot of fun. Anytime you get to talk about Ronald Acuña Jr., but more importantly, getting to talk about him once again playing, one of the best topics we can talk about when it comes to a Braves podcast. Stephen, anything else from you as we wrap up this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast?
Nope. I mean, I can't wait. I'm so excited for baseball. I can't wait. This is my favorite sport by far. College basketball is probably second. So this time of year is just the best time of year. So it's going to be fun. We're going to be here to cover it. Of course, whatever happens in spring training, with Ronald or with the pitching or with the roster spots, or if they make another move of any sort, we'll be here to cover it. And we appreciate the support as always.
Yeah. And the last thing that I'll end with is that cherish it, right? Like cherish the opportunity to see Ronald Acuña Jr. play baseball. I'm not saying that because I don't think that many of us do. I think all of us in Braves country cherish the opportunity to see him on the baseball field. It's just that we have not seen as much of it as I feel we should have seen because of the major injuries he's had. So when he comes back, when he's performing at the elite level that he does, and how much fun he plays baseball, or how much fun and passion he plays baseball with, making it fun for us, I think it's going to be great to see that once again. So come back strong, Ronald. Hopefully back to the Ronald that we all know and love, and the difference maker that we know you can be, the difference maker that clearly makes the Braves year in and year out a World Series title contender. For Stephen Tolbert, again, at @B_Outliers on Twitter, Shawn Coleman at StatsSEC, Hammer Territory, part of the Fowltory family of podcasts, both of those brands across all forms of social media. Make sure you check it all out. Until next time, go Braves. We'll talk to you again here soon on the Hammer Territory podcast.